Planet Reddit. Today's story is...
My wife thought I was cheating on her, so her sister set me up in a trap that almost destroyed my life. 7 years of marriage, and I never imagined what she was hiding. I'm 35 years old and have been married to Hazel for 7 years. I wouldn't say we had a perfect marriage, but it was good until what I'm about to tell you happened. We had the typical disagreements, the occasional argument over unimportant things, but nothing that made me consider leaving her or think that she would leave me. I never gave her any reason to doubt my loyalty, no suspicious behavior, no unexplained nights out, no secret messages or questionable activities on social networks. As far as I knew, there was trust between us. Then there's Candice, Hazel's younger sister. She's 30 and the best way to describe her would be as a meddler. She has a habit of getting involved in other people's situations, acting as a kind of supreme moral judge. She enjoys drama, she's always the first to have an opinion about someone's relationship, convinced that there are deceptions or lies. She has a way of twisting situations to make herself the center of attention, all under some pretext that helps her justify her actions. I tolerated her because she was my wife's sister, but I never liked her. Now I can safely say that I detest her. A few weeks ago, Candice took her behavior to an unimaginable level when she decided to pick on me. She organized an elaborate loyalty test at my workplace, something so reckless and senseless that I almost ended up losing my job. I still tremble with anger when I remember it. It all started like any other day. I arrived at my office, settled in and started my usual tasks. Suddenly a woman I had never seen before approached me. She was attractive, well-dressed and overly friendly. Initially, I thought it was just casual conversation, but within minutes it became clear that she was flirting with me. I immediately set boundaries, showing her my wedding ring. I made it clear that I was married, that I wasn't interested, and I even mentioned my wife several times during our conversation. But she seemed to ignore these signals. On the contrary, she insisted even more, looking for excuses to stay there, laughing exaggeratedly at things that were not funny, accidentally brushing her arm against mine, among other things. I realized that something wasn't right. To protect myself, I went straight to the Human Resources Department and reported the interaction. I didn't want any misunderstandings, and considering that there are very strict policies in my company, I thought it was better to be proactive. Human Resources took note and assured me that they would handle any problem if it arose. I thought the matter was over. 2 days later, I was called to a meeting with my boss. The same woman had filed a complaint against me. She claimed that I had harassed her, that I had made inappropriate comments to her, and even that I had sent her messages that I never sent. She presented falsified screenshots as evidence that I had been bothering her. I work in a company with a zero-tolerance policy towards harassment. The accusation alone was enough to put my entire career at risk, not just in this company. I had to face an internal investigation. I was questioned about events that never happened. I had to participate in meetings to prove my innocence. It was humiliating, frustrating, surreal. I had never spoken to this woman outside of our brief encounter in the office, and yet I was defending my reputation against a fabricated accusation. Fortunately, the security cameras saved me. The recordings show that my interaction with her had been minimal and that, of course, I had never done anything inappropriate. They reviewed my work messages and, as expected, found nothing incriminating because I had never sent her any messages. In the end, the complaint was dismissed, but not without a warning. Be careful, that's what they told me. Even though I hadn't done anything wrong, I was still warned to be careful in the future. That's how damaging a false accusation can be. It leaves a mark, even when it's proven to be a lie. I was furious. I had barely managed to keep my job, all because of a game that someone decided to play at my expense. It didn't take me long to find out who was behind it all. Candice. I confronted her directly and demanded an explanation. If anyone was hoping that she would feel guilty or regret what she had done, they don't know Candice. She saw it as a test, which she said was necessary to find out if I was faithful or not. She acted as if it were an intelligent experiment, as if I should thank her for giving me the opportunity to prove my loyalty. I went straight home and told Hazel everything, who already knew about the false accusations, hoping she would be as outraged as I was. I hoped she would understand how disturbing what her sister did was. I expected her to defend me, as a true wife would. But instead, she defended her sister. She told me I was exaggerating. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had just spent days fighting to clear my name, I almost lost my job, and my own wife was telling me it was no big deal, that her sister was just looking out for her. I repeated the whole situation to her, thinking that maybe she hadn't understood that her sister had almost ruined my life, but she seemed unable to comprehend it. I told her clearly that Candice had crossed a huge line, because this was dangerous. What am I saying? It wasn't just bordering on dangerous, it was definitely dangerous. Hazel just sighed, put on an expression of weariness at the whole situation, and asked me to forget about it. It was at that moment that I knew something wasn't right. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think that my own wife could be capable of something like that. But the way she minimized everything, it seemed as if her sister hadn't acted alone. Which made sense, because I don't believe that my sister-in-law would have made the decision to come and complicate my life by herself. Addition, many people ask why my work investigated me, even though I had previously reported the incident to Human Resources. I understand why that seems strange, so I want to clarify. When I mentioned to Human Resources that this woman approached me, I raised it as a precautionary warning, in case anything unusual happened. But at the time there was no actual incident to report. I didn't know who she was, and I had no reason to think that someone was setting me up. I simply mentioned that her behavior made me uncomfortable and that I rejected her advances. Human Resources took note, but without a formal complaint there wasn't much else they could do. Later, when this woman filed her complaint with false evidence, my initial report held, but the company still had to follow established procedures. I suppose anyone who harasses could preemptively report someone else to HR to protect themselves. This is not my case, but I understand why they investigated. They couldn't just believe me over her without looking into it. Since she presented falsified evidence, they had to take it seriously until they could prove it was fabricated. That's why I ended up under investigation, despite being proactive. And Candice? Unfortunately, she didn't face any legal consequences, as it wasn't her who made the complaint directly, but her friend. At this point, I'm realizing how deep Hazel's betrayal could be. If she really was involved, then not only did she set me up, but she watched for days as I agonized over my work without saying anything. She only cared about getting the answer she was looking for, without considering the damage it would cause. Of course it's just a hunch, but I think I have enough reason to think that she's involved too. Update. After my original post, I've been thinking about everything, including some details that I didn't share in my initial post because they were too long. It was very suspicious that my own wife didn't care at all what her sister had done. Hazel finally admitted it. And not only was she aware of everything, but she was the one who had asked Candice to do it. She didn't even seem to feel truly guilty when she confessed. She just looked at me and said that she had had a moment of doubt and thought that this was a way to calm her insecurities. I stood there watching her, trying to process it. Her sister almost destroyed my professional career, and all because she had personal insecurities that she refused to face in a mature way. She said it as if it were something insignificant, but I couldn't be around her. I felt a deep rejection. I became completely distant. I stayed at home, but I hardly spoke to her. I stopped sharing meals with her, stopped having any kind of conversation with her. I could see that she was starting to panic, but I didn't care. She had made her decision, the consequences were natural. Candice, for her part, showed no remorse whatsoever. In fact, she was proud of her actions. I spoke to her again and asked her if she understood what she had done, how easily everything could have gone wrong. If Human Resources had not believed me, I would have lost my job. My entire career could have been destroyed by her test. She simply laughed and said that an innocent man would not lose his job. Unfortunately, this is not always the case. It's like driving under the influence of alcohol. Maybe nothing will happen or maybe it will end very badly. Speaking again with my wife's sister made me understand that they were both completely out of line. I told Hazel that I couldn't stay in the same house as her at that moment. I didn't tell her that I was leaving for good, but I explained that I needed space. I packed a suitcase and stayed in a hotel. Hazel flooded my phone with messages, begging me to return. She insisted that I should forgive her, because she just wanted to feel safe in our marriage. And now that she had achieved that, it was time to enjoy that security, that we had a faithful and happy marriage. This statement and the way she expressed it, which I don't know how to convey in writing, is what made me doubt. I began to remember the last few months. Hazel had been behaving strangely since before any of this happened. Sometimes she was more distant, other times excessively affectionate, as if she were compensating for something. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now I realize this wasn't about me. She was projecting her own actions, so I started to investigate. I didn't need to look far. What I found confirmed all my suspicions. One day, with the excuse that I needed something from the house, I went back. If there was one place where I could find evidence of what was going on, it was on her phone or tablet. I was hoping to find more messages with her sister talking about the trial, but what I discovered was much worse. I asked him for his iPad, saying that I needed to check something at work and that I needed a bigger screen than my phone. Then I went to the bedroom to collect some belongings and asked him to leave me alone, that I didn't need him following me around the house apologizing, as he had been doing. Hazel had been reconnecting with her ex-partner. The messages I found were not explicit, there were no scheduled dates or compromising photographs, but neither were they innocent. They were full of shared memories, private jokes, little comments about how things used to be between them. It was clear that they had been communicating for some time. And then I discovered that they had met in person. That was all I needed to see. Hazel was experiencing guilt. She had been talking to her ex, perhaps even cheating on me emotionally or physically, and instead of admitting it, she decided to test me to feel better about herself. I confronted her after she sent some evidence to my own phone. At first, she tried to deny it. She said they were just catching up, that it was nothing serious. I lied to her, saying that I could understand if it was just nostalgia. Finally, she admitted it. She had started talking to him again, and yes, they had met up. But she swore it hadn't been real infidelity. She insisted that nothing physical had ever happened, that it was only emotional. For me, that was the end of it. I told her it was over and that I wanted a divorce. She became completely upset because she said I had lied to make her confess. And indeed I did. I wanted the whole truth at once, not the fragmented truth, like when I confronted her about what her sister had done. I should see it as a test, similar to the one she imposed on me. With the difference that she failed. She started to cry, begging me to talk, to go to therapy, not to destroy her marriage because of one mistake. But this wasn't just a mistake. She allowed her paranoia to take over, and instead of being honest, instead of talking to me, she involved her sister and almost ruined my life. All the while she was keeping in touch with her ex and, as far as I could see, having an emotional relationship with him. Candice, of course, intensified her stance. She tried to present me as if I were just looking for an excuse to leave, as if I were exaggerating a harmless test. She even suggested that by wanting to leave Hazel, I was proving that she was right. At this point, being right or not is irrelevant to me. I would care about being right if I stayed in this marriage. Divorce is a real option, I just need to hire a lawyer and finalize this process. Hazel keeps trying to contact me, all to offer explanations about her ex. But even though the ex thing is bad enough on its own, everything she orchestrated with her sister is simply unforgivable. I don't see how I could reconcile with a woman like that. I even consider that if I hadn't asked her sister for proof, she probably would have become unfaithful to me if she hasn't already done so because of her insecurities. For me, this is completely over. We have reached a point of no return. Addition, I was so angry when I wrote this that I forgot to mention something important about the woman who falsely accused me at work. I later discovered, from Candice no less, that this wasn't just a cover for Hazel. If you remember, the test was to flirt with me and see if I responded positively. That was it. But then the friend ended up filing a complaint, which doesn't make sense in the context of the test. I mean, that wouldn't prove anything about my fidelity. It was about her bruised ego. According to Candice, this woman was offended because I rejected her. She thought she could trick me, probably assuming that I, like most men from her perspective, would not turn down such an opportunity. But when I rejected her without hesitation, she felt embarrassed. And instead of accepting the humiliation, she decided to take revenge. She fabricated the accusation at that moment because she wanted to punish me for having said no to her. She wanted to harm me for making her feel insignificant. In short, these women don't mind causing me problems just for the sake of their fragile egos. That's why the divorce is not only to get away from my wife, but also from her entire toxic family, and those close to her. Update 2. I officially filed for divorce a few days later. Hazel continued to try to contact me, insisting that we could still work it out, but I blocked her. There are the consequences of her insecurities. It may seem like a very strange idea to you, almost incomprehensible, but if you have insecurities, you should work on them with a professional or with your partner, not with your ex or your sister's manipulator. The divorce represents the end, at least for me, but Candice seemed to think, we're not finished until I say so, doing something else to hurt me, because her life is so empty she has nothing better to do. A week later, I received an email from another human resources department, this time from a company I hadn't even worked for. It turns out that I had been in the running for a great job opportunity, one that I had applied for months ago and had already forgotten about. I hadn't heard back for a long time, so I assumed they had selected another candidate. But then, unexpectedly, they contacted me to inform me that they had received some worrying information about my behavior and wanted to discuss it before proceeding with my application. I didn't need to ask, I already knew. Candice had tried again. She had sent the same falsified screenshots, the same fabricated messages that had almost cost me my previous job, but this time she sent them to a potential employer. All because I was leaving her sister. She needed to get her revenge, because she wasn't going to let me get divorced so easily. Fortunately, I still had all the evidence from the first incident, the HR reports, the security footage, everything that proved my innocence. I immediately sent all the documentation to the hiring manager, along with a warning that someone was trying to defame me. I thought they might decide to distance themselves from the situation just to avoid complications, but instead they thanked me for my transparency. In fact, they were so impressed with the way I handled the situation that they offered me the job immediately. Again, I got lucky, and instead of losing something, I ended up with a very favorable job offer. It's an offer for a position they need to fill in a few months, when the person who currently holds it retires from the company. I think Candice thought she would get away with it, like her friend did, but if I haven't dealt with her until now, it's because I was concentrating on my divorce. It's not that I was going to let all this pass without filing a lawsuit, but thanks to her new recklessness, I'm now going to do it sooner than planned. I'll ask for a few days off work to deal with this matter. I know some will say that all this happened because I didn't take care of Candice before, but it's not like my days suddenly have an extra 5 hours. In addition to being away from home, which complicates everything because I don't have access to all my belongings, I still have to go to work, deal with the divorce, and attend to any other responsibilities that arise. A legal process is not a simple thing that is resolved quickly. That's why I've taken this week off, because I'll be meeting with a litigation lawyer to analyze my case. Besides, I need to find a more permanent place and move all my belongings. I can't need a shirt and make a trip home every time, because the hotel only fits 3, and that's with luck. I know I'm exaggerating, but it illustrates that it's not the same as living in your own home. I wish I had the means for a 5-star hotel with a dressing room and laundry service, but I could only afford one night. But many of those comments must come from teenagers whose mothers wash and iron their clothes, while their only concern of the day is advancing the level of their character in some video game or whatever teenagers are playing these days. Addition, reading this makes me feel very old. Video game plus whatever teenagers are playing these days sounds like something my father would say. Update 3. The divorce dragged on much longer than it should have. When one of the parties resists divorce, it unnecessarily complicates things. There are people who don't understand that it's all over and that it's time to move on. Candice, my sister-in-law, at the beginning of my story had a lot to say about what was happening, but when legal action was taken against her, she conveniently decided to remain silent. She did the right thing, because although it will still take some time, I hope she faces serious legal consequences for her actions. In my personal life, I have now started my new job. The responsibilities are greater, but so are the opportunities, as well as the salary increase, which I can't afford to miss out on. The change has been better than I anticipated, and it has come at a very opportune moment. It has helped me enormously to change my environment. The job is in another part of the city, so I am a bit far from where Hazel and I lived. That, although it may seem insignificant, contributes to it feeling like a new beginning. It's as if I'm living a different life and my previous life is far behind me. Now, regarding the events related to my ex, the same individual with whom she was emotionally unfaithful to me unexpectedly showed up at her house, in the middle of the divorce process. It's his house now, because it was a place we were renting together and I asked to be taken off the contract. It turns out that he was convinced that Hazel had been giving up everything for him, so when he finally decided to take the plunge, believing it was his big chance to revive the relationship, she rejected him. I found out about all this through mutual friends. He turned up expecting a romantic reunion, only to be rejected, humiliated, and enraged at having wasted his time with false hopes. If she wasn't even really interested, I don't understand why he provoked the whole situation. You sacrificed a marriage for absolutely nothing. With the divorce papers already signed, I now only have one front left, Candice. I feel like a general who has fought a great battle on one front, but now has his entire army to finish the war on the other. I can even see myself riding across vast prairies, arriving on that front with reinforcements to defeat the enemy. The trial certainly won't be as dramatic, but that's how I perceive it at the moment. I can tell that I feel much more optimistic. Update 4. When I reached the conclusion of the trial against Candice, which also included her friend and my ex-wife, although with different degrees of responsibility, I felt a bit like in the final description I shared in my previous post. It wasn't as epic because it didn't even take place in a courtroom, as we were able to reach an agreement between all parties to avoid prolonging the process any further. But for me it represented a victory, because obtaining financial compensation from these women, who tried to harm me with their unjustifiable excuses, has been a satisfactory reparation. And there is also another relevant aspect regarding this that I will comment on. For those who are curious, my ex-sister-in-law had to pay me $18,000, while her friend paid $21,000. Both with similar responsibilities. The second for falsely reporting me out of revenge, and the first for doing the same at my current job. My ex-wife received a penalty of $12,000 for having been the one who initially asked Candies to organize the test. That's over $50,000 for their recklessness, much more than I expected when I filed the lawsuit, but the agreement doesn't end there. They all agreed not to contact me under any circumstances, as if they did, we could go back to court and I could sue for double the amount, keeping what I have already received. That is, potentially an additional $100,000. Not only could I get more compensation with this, but I would also avoid any kind of contact with them. However, beyond the money, which is obviously important, what I enjoyed most was observing the expressions of the three of them as they signed the documents that day. Candies and her friend looked indescribably angry, while Hazel seemed mainly sad, and that's it. I have nothing more to share. I just want to say thank you because you have followed my story from the first publication to this latest one,